Hello viewers and welcome to part 2 of our Autosport International 2013 coverage. So part 1 we saw the Formula 1 cars, new and old, and now this part we're going to look at another flow, another evolution of cars as we take a look at those driven by Sir Jackie Stewart, 3-time world champion. Let's take a look. So onto the Sir Jackie Stewart stand, one of the legends of British motorsport. It was great to see all these cars brought together. It's always nice to see when they go through a driver's career and it spans the alterations and improvements that have been made over that time. And you can see his F1 debut car here. Look at that. It really is just it's a rocket on wheels. And of course, as you'll know, many of you will know, Formula 1 cars and racing cars were derived from aeroplanes. And so they had forward engines, and then they moved the engine to the rear because they realised it was better for the car that way, and lots to do with structure and balance and all the rest of it. But they were originally built on aeroplanes. So this is an aeroplane with no wings, but it has wheels on it instead. That's basically what a Formula 1 car was in the 50s and 60s, and well, before that as well. So very simple interiors and a very simple design, but effective and built by mechanics in standard mechanics body shops. Certainly a lot of work. We can see here now, moving on to his later cars, Ken Terrell, a legendary team owner, car designer, engineer, and a beautiful realisation of a car here. I really think this was a stunning car. I like the changes, the aerodynamic ideas to it, everything about it for me. This was a car I spent quite a bit of time on, looking at the suspension structure, the mechanical workings to the rear, what the engineers had to come up with. You know, they were doing something new for the first time. They didn't have computers to help them. They had to make something by hand and come up with the ideas and understand how that was going to work. You know, call it a giant Meccano set, and it's just fantastic to see how compact these things were. You know, and you imagine the workload that went into them, getting them just right and making a car that was consistent. And of course, I noticed here that the rivets that were in, these were handmade. You know, this wasn't moulded bodywork, and this was one of the last cars on the display that really showed riveted bodywork. There you can see where it's been cleaned up over the years, a few scrubs on it, and the hand welded hoop here as well. That was all these little details I like to see on these cars. You just don't see that on a modern F1 car. It gives it a real human touch, which is really nice. As we move on now, and again, you can begin to see the moulded bodyworks coming in, the beginnings of the intake and the rear wing of a modern day. Big rear wing here, big engines, all on display. And you can see the exhausts below. Steering wheel. Again, the actual driver's cockpit hasn't changed a great deal over these years. You can see it's been painted blue. That's about the biggest difference there was. The cockpit stayed quite conventional. But the idea of wings, of, you know, fatter tyres, more grip, more grunt, essentially, it was just make a bigger engine, send it out there. And you can see the constant innovation. Early 70s, 73. And again, you can see the moulded bodywork taking shape more and more. Again, the flowing lines towards the rear wing. And the concept changing. Again, not huge changes to the inside there, but certainly to the front end, how to take the air and flow it over the car. But as ever, the compact rear assemblies that they had to work with, always impressive. And then we move up to, obviously, Jackie Stewart's own team, Formula 1 team in the late 90s. This was a very plain looking car. I don't know if it had all of the wing settings that it would have had at the time. Certainly it seemed to me, I was sure there was a few more details on it than that, but you can see that's fully moulded, very compact design, almost looks very plain in comparison to the works of art we've just seen there. So much is hidden away underneath. And again, diffusers wise, I'm not certain that there wasn't any more diffuser bits and pieces there, but it was nice to see the car and the evolution that we've gone through in developing them. And of course, then Sir Jackie was talking about Johnny Herbert winning that. I spoke to Johnny Herbert about that a few years ago, his selection to move on to wet tyres. So your Jaguar E-Type here, classic car, red, very nice. Getting some arty shots for you guys. it's a privilege to see all these cars, to see all the stuff gathered together. This is what makes Autosport great. You know, it's not just all the standard racing stuff, it's the old stuff and the mechanical side of things. And, you know, many of the guys that built these cars were wandering around the show and they were accessible. And that's what's brilliant about Autosport International. What's great about British motorsport is that there is such a passion there, the old and the new. And it still retains a lot of those people, and they just love their cars of every genre, and it's great to see. So a wide range of cars, and you think he's raced all these races and he's still alive. I have to say, it was a risky business for these guys, but we finished with the Lotus Elan there. And that, viewers, is the Sir Jackie Stewart display. So a fascinating display there. I always like to see the evolution of the cars, and it does boggle the mind just how dangerous they were to drive, how much commitment a driver needed back then. But it all came with the mentality of driving. It didn't appear the same sort of danger. It's strange, but it's like the fans. You know, it was as dangerous to be a fan back then as it was to be a driver. Yet that didn't deter the fans, as it doesn't from rallying and stuff like that even now. But fantastic to see some of these cars on display. And, you know, really seeing what, the little bits and pieces, the sort of the mechanics really worked on these, how these things were built and moulded, and how they developed and were revised, and how motorsport went from the mechanics body shop to the technical infrastructures that they have today. It's an absolutely fascinating display, as was Sir Jackie Stewart's interview with Autosport. So a great display this year, fantastic to see, and that concludes part 2 of our Autosport coverage. So obviously we've got more coming in with simulation, and do check out the other parts if you've not seen them as well, because they really are worth a look, especially if you're into your motorsport of any genre. But that's it from me for now. As ever, part 3 to follow, and be more soon.